next sheriff in Wayne County. Last year, Sheriff Barry Virts said that he would not seek another term in office. Fast forward a little more than 1 year, and we are days away from a competitive primary. Earlier this week, we caught up with Rob Milby, one of those candidates, and today I am joined by Steve MacNeal. Steve, thanks so much for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
So talk to me a little bit about what went into this decision process for you to take that step to run for sheriff.
So this has really been in the works for 10 or 15 years. I grew up in a law enforcement family. My grandfather served the sheriff's office in Wayne County for 33 years. He was undersheriff under 5 different sheriff administrations, which is really unique because typically each sheriff will bring in their own undersheriff. But I can remember going to work with him when I was a little kid, and I guess I got the public service bug. Shortly after high school, immediately after high school, I joined the Walworth Fire Department, where I started to volunteer as a firefighter and an EMT. And timing was right. I took the civil service test and scored well enough to get hired at a pretty young age. And I've just been passionate about law enforcement since. My motivations have changed throughout the years, as every police officer does. But it has always been my goal to be the sheriff of Wayne County. So it wasn't a difficult decision to make at all. I was surprised to hear that Sheriff Virts wasn't going to seek re-election. But it was a pretty easy decision to make, and I'm happy that we've done that.
So when you think about your career thus far, obviously you've been in law enforcement for a long time. What were some of the big things that stand out to you that brought you to this moment? What are some of the bigger memories or experiences that made you feel like this was the right thing to do and the right time to do it?
Well, I've done this job for 23 years. I've had an opportunity to work at 3 fantastic agencies. I started with the Sheriff's Office. I worked for the town of Irondequoit for a period of time, and now I'm currently the Administrative Sergeant in the town of Macedon Police Department. I've had some great experiences in all agencies, all departments. Some of the ones that stand out are my time that I served with the Greater Rochester Area Narcotics Enforcement Team. That's a narcotics position, an undercover position where I worked with some of the finest in Monroe County. We handled some pretty serious investigations with some of the worst of the worst. The folks at Irondequoit, they do a great job with their investigations. And we worked hand in hand with our criminal investigations unit as a road patrol member to work on some pretty serious scenes. The one that always stands out the most is the Christmas Eve shooting in West Webster. That's something that I'll take with me forever. And it's things like that where I feel I can bring my experiences back to Wayne County. It's one thing to train an active shooter situation. It's another thing to actually be there and experience some of the things that go on there. And I feel I can bring that to the men and women of the Wayne County Sheriff's Office to better serve the citizens of Wayne County. But it's just a different, Monroe County does things differently, and Macedon does things differently, and the Sheriff's Office does things differently. So I have the ability to kind of look at all those things and make decisions about what's going to work best for our community as a whole. Every program in Monroe County isn't going to work in Wayne County. I've experienced that over the last 7 years as I've implemented programs at the Macedon Police Department. But it takes some trial and error to find out what's going to work best. And I bring that new vision. I bring my experiences at other agencies to Wayne County. And I look forward to implementing those with the men and women of the Sheriff's Office.
When you think about some of the challenges that law enforcement faces broadly, what do you think the priorities are or should be looking forward for an office like the Sheriff's Department?
Two big ones that immediately come to mind. Number one, the mental health situation that we're dealing with across the nation. And number two, the opioid crisis that, again, we're seeing across the nation. A couple nights ago, I was in a meeting with Jim Heights, who is the director of Wayne County Mental Health. And he provided us with some numbers for the first quarter in Wayne County, 435 calls for service strictly for mental health related things. That's 36 a week. That's over 5 a day. That's a crisis. And we as law enforcement need to work with the Office of Mental Health and both public and private sector organizations to determine the best response method to address these calls for mental health. We need to work with 911 to develop some screening to see if perhaps a social worker or a mental health worker would be a better response to somebody who's in crisis. I recognize that the uniform can sometimes cause anxiety, so I want to do things that we can, to reduce that anxiety so we can give folks in Wayne County the best care they deserve. Another alarming thing that was in the numbers was they surveyed a number of school-age children, grades 6, 8, 10, and 12. And about an average of 10% of those kids had contemplated suicide. These are kids. These are teenage kids and preteen kids who are contemplating suicide. And we need to do a better job to support the services of the Office of Mental Health, but for us to get the training as well and make sure that we're providing services to those in Wayne County. Additionally, the number one cause of death for the American police officer is suicide, and it doubles line of duty deaths every year. We need to do a better job of taking care of those who take care of our community, and we do that by offering mental health services, whether it's through counseling, EAP, or more importantly, peer support, which we've seen trending across the country as a way to allow law enforcement professionals and first responders in general to be able to talk about the stressors of the job, to be able to talk about the PTSD that they've experienced without stigma or without being judged that perhaps they're not suitable for the job. We've got a lot of work to do, and I will bring that work to Wayne County when I'm elected sheriff.
What are the issues, maybe it mirrors a couple of those, but what are the big issues that voters are bringing to you as you're going through the campaign process, knocking on doors, talking to different people throughout Wayne County?
I've heard a lot of concerns about staffing, and I'm not sure how these are presented in the community. And I think staffing's been an issue with the sheriff's office for a number of years. I know staffing's always an issue in Macedon, and I know that it's also an issue with the sheriff's office. And I think we can do more to bring people into Wayne County to apply for law enforcement jobs, whether it's road patrol or whether it's in the jail. Both divisions are struggling with getting personnel to stay, qualified personnel to get trained and stay here in Wayne County. There are a number of things that we can do. We can create an environment where people want to stay, and we do that by giving them buy-in. We do that by listening to their grievances, by addressing their grievances, by letting them make some decisions as to how they are going to do their jobs, how they're going to do investigations. We give them that responsibility and say, yes, you can certainly try it that way, and we will see if that method works. We need to provide top-notch training for them, and I have a plan for that. Create a training environment where they look forward to coming to training days, and they want to stay because the training is the best around. I spent some time as the president of the Western Wayne Chamber of Commerce, and one of the initiatives we implemented was showcasing what Wayne County has to offer. Not just for businesses, but for entertainment, for restaurants, for things people can do with their families. I'll take the same approach as sheriff, and I will partner with other organizations and agencies to showcase what we have here so we can invite people to move to Wayne County, invite people who are now willing to take that civil service test so they can work in the jail or they can work on the road, and then we work to keep them here, retain them here in Wayne County.
That's speaking pretty directly to the retention element, but I'm curious, when you think about sort of the challenges that, at least the perception problem that law enforcement has right now from a recruiting standpoint, does it feel like part of this problem is a little out of a sheriff's office's control, or what would you like to see happen on that front so that the presentation starts to change a little bit in terms of what police are doing in the community?
Yeah, sure. We don't have a lot of control over what we're seeing on a national platform or in the media, right? But we can certainly take what we have and throw some tools at it and figure out how we can fix it. So one of the things we do is we talk about recruitment. I will implement a teen and citizens police academy in Wayne County, and I believe that perhaps they may have just done this. And if that is in fact the case, I will build upon that. In Irondequoit, they had a fantastic program. It was very well attended. There was always a waiting list. And I will do that in Wayne County as well. I think that's a great place to start for teens. Start early. You talk about the SRO program, where those the school resource officers can be mentors and role models to these kids in school. What a better place to start. And then we continue with our recruitment efforts at trade schools, at BOCES, at high schools, at colleges. Get those kids thinking at an early age that public service is what they want to do for a living. So is it a hurdle right now for staffing? Yes, but I own a pizzeria as well, and staffing is a hurdle there too. So it's not just law enforcement. It's across the board. We're seeing it across the nation. And we'll work hard to get over this hurdle, and we will have a fantastic crew of people to work here.
You mentioned earlier the mental health effects of working in law enforcement and how that has been an issue across the board, across the nation. I'm curious, when you think about sort of the longevity of officers in terms of their careers and how quickly they are to, whether it be move out of law enforcement altogether after they have, say, 20 years in, or perhaps be looking for the next least stressful opportunity for them, is that part of the equation too, is really focusing on that when it comes to the recruiting element, making sure that, you know, incoming officers, recruits, whatever the case may be, understand that the Wayne County Sheriff's Office does care about the well-being of them on a sort of human level?
Of course, and that starts in the very beginning. You know, that starts your top-down leadership. This is the culture we're going to have in the Sheriff's Office. And then it goes into the academy. You know, recruits are required to have 16 hours of officer wellness training. Well, that's not enough. It's 2 days worth of training, and then it's done. So we will continue to foster that culture in the Sheriff's Office with regular training, having resources available. Officer wellness is going to be a part of our regular training, just like defensive tactics, just like penal law, just like firearms. Officer wellness is important because it affects everything. Yep. Your mental health affects your decision making. It affects your mood. It affects your temper. It affects the way that you deal with people on the street. If you've got poor mental health, then there's a likelihood that you're going to be involved in more use of force decisions because you're not thinking thoroughly. There's a chance that you're going to have more personnel complaints because your fuse is perhaps shorter and you've got less patience with people. So mental health and sleep and all of that, the entire officer wellness aspect plays into how deputies and officers deal with people on the street.
I want to talk a little bit about an issue that I think ties pretty in well with what you were just talking about. The opioid epidemic in terms of what we do to fix it. That is the ultimate question, especially in law enforcement right now. And I'm curious, it seems to be that, at least from the public's point of view, the answer is more officers. But it's interesting because I talk to different folks in law enforcement, and they'll acknowledge that that's part maybe of the solution, but that it's way more nuanced than that. When you think about the opioid epidemic where it stands right now, what response looks like to it across the board, what maybe do you think is lacking in terms of that response to it, and maybe what's held back some of the progress that counties like Wayne County or any other could have possibly been making over the last 5 to 10 years on that front?
You don't have to look very far to find programs that are working for other agencies. And I love to showcase the program that the Monroe County Sheriff's Office uses. So while, yes, enforcement is important, we will partner with local, state, and federal officials, federal agencies, to keep lethal doses of opioids out of the hands of our children and our family and our friends. We will partner with those federal agencies who will provide us manpower, who will provide us with overtime reimbursement to help keep the budget flat, and their resources second to none. You talk about technology, the technology that the federal government has that will allow us to do certain investigative techniques. It's second to none. But enforcement is only one part of it. I want to see a rehabilitative approach. And I think that's really what we need to do, is we need to take a two-pronged approach. So in Monroe County, If someone overdoses in Monroe County and they survive, shortly after the overdose, a day or two later, a deputy will arrive at their house and ask them if they want help. And if they agree to that help, they will put them in a car and they will drive them to a rehabilitation facility. That's unheard of. Law enforcement driving somebody to a rehab facility. That's because somebody had the foresight to go, you know what? The opioid addiction is such a strong addiction, and it's difficult to walk away from that. We need to do something different to save the lives of these folks who are overdosing. And it is a tough addiction, and it doesn't matter how you became addicted. Were you in an accident? You were prescribed opiates for pain. Were you a heroin user? It doesn't matter how you got there. It's so difficult to kick that addiction. And we will partner with other organizations, with other agencies to make sure that we're getting services to those people who struggle with addiction. Because you can't just give somebody an appearance ticket for possession of heroin and think that's going to solve the problems. It's not. We have to follow up. And the Office of Public Health and Mental Health in Wayne County have done a fantastic job with providing these services to folks who struggle with addiction. And we will make sure we're partnering with them and working with them on a regular basis, on a daily basis, to make sure that these folks are getting the help. Jim Heights provided us with some numbers again at this meeting. Opioid overdoses are up 100% in Wayne County from March of last year to February of this year. Opioid-related fatalities, get this, 500% increase. 5 times the number of people are dying due to an opioid-related overdose. That's a staggering number. That's a scary, real number. And we need to do something different. And I think, one of the things that kind of holds Wayne County back, and I'm not saying this as a negative, but when this is the way you've done it for so long, right? This is the Wayne County box. This is where we've done it. Sometimes it's tough to come up with new ideas. And that's where I have an advantage because I've served in different counties. I've built some amazing relationships with folks who still work in Monroe County and Ontario County. And I see what's working and I see what we can implement here. And I look forward to January 1 when I can start to implement those programs and get people the services they need.
To that end, a lot of, and this is sort of an ambiguous topic, but I want to get into a little bit. There are a lot of pressure, external pressures, to change what policing looks like. When you hear folks say, well, policing needs to change, what comes to mind? What could change, should change? What shouldn't change? What are some of the things that come up when you start to think about being sheriff in Wayne County?
So I had the opportunity to draft the reform and reinvention plan for the Macedon Police Department. That was a plan that was required by the governor's executive order. And it afforded me an opportunity to do a ton of research. And I took this project very seriously. I took it to heart. I heard stories of people who live in our community who didn't feel safe around law enforcement. And as a guy who's passionate about this career, about this life I've chosen, it's bothersome to me. I know it's bothersome to them as well. So, we talk about approaches that we can take. Community is huge, and I'm a big proponent for community outreach and having those community relationships. And the deputies have done a great job of building those relationships in our community already, but I think we can do more to build upon those. I think we can implement neighborhood watch programs so we can allow folks in our community to see more of what we do. Like I said earlier, the Citizens and the Teen Police Academy. Great opportunities for people to learn what law enforcement's actually doing, to learn about the laws and some of the limitations that we have or don't have when it comes to how we enforce the laws. I think it's important you talk about technology, putting tech pieces in place like a records management system that Wayne County has struggled with for years, to find a records management system so we can not only share information with other agencies in the county, but we can put a tracking system in place so we can ensure that we don't have law enforcement personnel who maybe aren't dealing with people appropriately. So we can make sure that race is not an issue in Wayne County. We need to put checks and balances in place, and I'm not suggesting that anybody is doing the wrong thing, But why wouldn't we put things in place just to make sure that we are doing the right thing? There's a lot that can change. Communication, education, and that community piece is huge, and it's another one of my passions. My community is it's my life, and it's a big part of what the sheriff's office is going to be. And I think we can make some true and legitimate differences through a law enforcement aspect for our community and a nation as a whole.
You mentioned technology, and obviously we can't talk about technology and not at least mention social media and the role that social media has played, not just in day-to-day life and sort of the interactions that people have, good, bad, and indifferent with each other, but also the way law enforcement does their thing. Talk to me a little bit about what you sort of see as the long-term vision for the role that social media plays in policing, in how you guys go about doing your job on a daily basis.
Sure. What a great tool we have at our fingertips. Almost everybody has some sort of social media platform. We, too, will have all those platforms at the sheriff's office. And we will make sure we're using those platforms to not only educate our community, but showcase what the men and women of the sheriff's office are doing. You know, the spotlight has been on us for the last 18 months. You know, and we'll take responsibility for the things we don't get right, but we're also going to showcase the things that we do right, that our deputies do, like the school resource officers. They're invaluable, and the schools love them, the kids love them. We're going to showcase those folks. That's great for weather emergencies, you know, when we're looking for a suspect or a missing person. I can't tell you how many times in Macedon we've used a social media platform when we've had a missing person, and it's shared just dozens and dozens of times very, very quickly, and often results in a successful outcome. One of the other things that I want to do as well is use our social media platforms to drive people to the sheriff's office website. And I'm picturing a complete rebuild of the website. I want every service that's available to the residents of Wayne County to be available as a hub on our website with the sheriff's office. If you need help with, you know, financial assistance paying your bills, I want you to know that you can come to our website and you can search the website and find that Wayne Cap is in Wayne County, and they're willing to help out. If you need help with mental health, I want you to come to our website, find out what resources we have, find out what resources the Office of Mental Health has. I want that to be a hub, and that's not a very big lift if you think about it. A little work in the beginning to get all those resources available and on there, but there's no reason why the sheriff's office can't use those tech pieces in a simple format, drive people to the website, and communicate with our folks and educate our community.
Last topic I want to get into here, obviously Republican primary coming up in about a week or so. However, you've also been endorsed by Democrats. Encapsulate that for us a little bit if you could, just in terms of perhaps Republican voters out there who might be a little confused or concerned about the fact that you have been endorsed by Democrats since we are living in, unfortunately, pretty polarized times.
We are living in a divided time, and that's unfortunate. The political system is confusing, and you hit it on the head there. It is confusing. So yes, as a Republican, I have been endorsed by the Wayne County Democratic Committee, and I will appear on the Democratic line as a Republican in November. To me, some people are upset by that. Well, how could you do that? How, you know, that makes you a Democrat, and that makes your values this or that. I look at it just the opposite. Why wouldn't you want the chief law enforcement executive in your county to have the ability to reach across the aisle and serve every single person in Wayne County? This isn't a political position. This shouldn't be a political position. It's a political process, and I recognize that. But I've said from the very beginning, there is no place for politics in law enforcement. And I will serve every single citizen in Wayne County regardless of their political affiliation. And I don't think anybody's gonna mind what my political affiliation is at 3 a.m. when they're calling for help because they need something. Just like the deputies aren't going to be concerned about that. So it is confusing. There is a little bit of learning that had to be done about how we were going to approach the political process. But I am a Republican. and I am seeking the Republican nomination or endorsement from the voters on primary day, which is next Tuesday, June 22nd.
Well, I do appreciate your time, and I appreciate you taking it this close to Election Day. Obviously, we are closing in on it about a week away, so best of luck, and thanks for taking the time today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
That is all the time we have for today. As always, we will be back live next Monday at 11 a.m., and in the meantime, you can check us out on YouTube, Facebook, or on your favorite podcast platform, too. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Inside the Finger Lakes is a production of FingerLakes1.com digital media. The show is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen to shows like this one. It's hosted by me, Josh Durso, and if you want to hear archived episodes, visit InsideTheFLX.com. If you have an idea for a show, email it to josh@FingerLakes1.com or follow me on Twitter @FLXJosh, where we keep the conversation going all week long. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you back here next week.